So we should now have the recording on, I hope. I'll just quickly switch to my slides in just a second. Let me just make them appear properly first. Gosh, my machine's on, going slowly. Right, that's better. Right, let's try that again. Right, hopefully I'm sharing my screen.
Yes.
So welcome everyone to our call. We're not going to talk about the ITF meeting in Montreal last week, but there's just a few pictures of different things in Montreal, which was from certainly my experience, a very good week. So nice to see the city and have lots of interesting conversations through the week, but we'll cover that next week. Much more importantly, in the meantime, the focus of our call this week, which, as you'll know, is sponsored by DNS OARC. Thank you to them for sponsoring the call. And very aptly in this case, because Libor talked about DNSSEC validation as part of the sign-in pipeline in a very abbreviated presentation this time at the DNS OARC meeting in Stockholm. Well, only about a month ago. It seems like ages ago, but only a month ago. So the plan is to have a little bit more time to go into that material in a bit more depth and have time for more discussion than was feasible within the fairly condensed DNS OARC agenda. And then, time permitting, I'll just skate through some of the recent news headlines, remind you some forthcoming events, etc. at the back end of the call. So that's the plan, but let me stop screen sharing. Press the right button, sorry. Welcome, Libor, to the call. I know you've been on, I think, before, a while ago now, I believe. I'm struggling to remember, but anyway, it's good to have you on. Looking forward to the presentation. As I say, we'll have time for a longer discussion than was feasible in Stockholm. And I think Libor's going to cover some new ground. So even anyone that was there'd be some new stuff and more depth to the content. So without more ado, Libor, over to you. Looking forward to the presentation.
Yeah, hello. So let me share my slides. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I'm Libor Peltan. I'm from CZ.NIC, the Czech domain registry, and I am the developer of Node.dns for anyone who haven't met me yet. So this is a reiteration of my talk at the OARC at Stockholm, where I had too much little time for speaking about the topic, and I hope I have more here, and I mostly hope I have more time for answering your questions at the end. So let us go through. My talk is about a big authoritative operation. Big means where the authoritative DNS servers are separated into those that actually do answer the queries from the internet and those that are invisible, that are part of some backend infrastructure of the operator, where the zone contents are being prepared for the answering. And the zone contents for authoritative operations are mostly being prepared in several steps. In the top left corner, you can see the source of the true, be it a database or a zone file generated somehow, or a registry system or whatever. And on the bottom right corner, you can see a cloud of public-facing secondaries that are distributed all over the globe. And the servers between, or it does not necessarily be like separated servers for those tasks, but the tasks in between are about preparing the zone contents for the authoritative answering. And this includes the DNSSEC signer. Therefore, this this infrastructure is usually called the signing pipeline, but there is more than that. And yeah, what I would like to talk about is mostly about the validators that validate somehow the correctness of the zone before we actually answer the client queries. And it's also important to see how those servers are like synchronizing with each other, how they hand over the zone contents from one to another. And this can be done, for example, by a shared database backend, like which is usual for the Power DNS operation. And also this database backend is a new feature of Node.dns, but the most traditional and most interoperable way is zone transfers. And if we are talking about big zone operators, then the big zone should not be transferred every time, which is when it is changed, which is frequently. So we would be trying to achieve always the incremental zone transfers. Okay, so the validators can be of multiple types, but in this case, for illustrations, we have two validators in the signing pipeline. The bottom validator is the DNSSEC validator, and it is taking care that the DNSSEC signer did not do anything wrong. Yes, it has happened in the past that due to some software errors or misconfigurations, the DNSSEC signer can have a bug or malfunction. So it is really necessary to have a DNSSEC validator that guards the DNSSEC signer from doing any harm to the public-facing service. And the other validator that we have here is the unsigned validator, which is guarding against an error in the source of the true. For example, if the registry system somehow works badly, has a bug, and deletes all the delegations related to one registrar, which is also a thing that has happened in the past. So we should have unsigned validator that protects from any failures like those. And this is heavily depending on custom policies of every operator and their history and their experience and such. So this unsigned validator is really a custom thing, and it can be pretty different among different operators. So what do we expect from those validators? Because they are part of the signing pipeline, we expect that they obtain always the changes to the newest version in the form of an incremental zone transfer. And after validation, they also send again the incremental zone transfer to the secondaries. And if the validation fails, they should prevent sending the new version to the public-facing secondaries. Instead, they should continue serving the last version that validated well. And of course, if the error fixes itself, which is a common case, they should accept the subsequent version that is correct again and skip over to the new good version. What we see at many operators is the so-called after-the-fact validation. That means that the incremental update is immediately passed to the public-facing secondaries and validated subsequently, which is necessary if we have a frequently updated zone which is large and we are not able to validate incrementally. So if we want to avoid this, we should strive for incremental validation. So the first issue that we want to solve for this is how to call external tools from the actual DNS software implementation. We expect that part of the signing pipeline, there is an instance of a common implementation of a DNS server like bind or not. And we have some external tool like DNSSEC verify zone or our custom written script that does our enforcing of our policies, and we want to call it somehow from the DNS server. For this, we have several options, but I'm aware of two of them. The two mainstream options are using the NSD way of doing this or the not DNS way of doing this. And the design is pretty different. So let me dive more into those. For NSD, the external tool can be called by a simple system call. So the system syscall is only like launching a subprocess in Unix world, and it ends up with some error code at the end. So the NSD is reading out this error code, and based on this, it either accepts or rejects the new version. And in the NSD configuration, you can pretty easily specify what should be called. Like we have two examples here. One is with the drill command that queries a query for DS record, and probably it will only do some DNSSEC validation of the DS query, and based on this, it will either succeed or fail. Or in the second example, we call LDNS verify zone, which is another tool from NLNet Labs, which only verifies the DNSSEC in the zone file. In this example, we use the optional feed zone, which hands over the full zone file of the zone being validated to the external tool. As you can see, this is pretty simple to configure and easy, which is good, what we want. But there is no access to the actual differences. You can also like hand over the full zone file. This can be like worked around by querying the XFR of the primary server, for example, of the signer. So you can use, for example, KDIC utility to query XFR and pass it on to your script and do stuff with that. But this is still leads to limited checks of the DNSSEC, for example, like for complete DNSSEC validation that is like that checks everything. You need both the access to the full zone and the differences. So this does not give you a possibility of full validation. For not DNS, the design is completely different. And not DNS expect that the validating script is still running in the background. It can be even in a separate container or stuff. And it communicates with the running instance of non-DNS using the dbus interface and the non-DNS control socket. And this way, the validating script is always notified when the event of necessary validation happened, and it should make the validation and turn back the node.dns through the control socket the outcome. The configuration of node.dns also like takes just few lines to configure, but the script is somewhat more complex, but not that complex. As you can see, you can just write several lines in Python or even Bash, as I did, to write the script that actually listens at the dbus interface and does some verification and tells the node.dns back the outcome. So these are possibilities how to call the external tools. The second problem, which we talk about, is what to actually validate. Mostly in the case of the unsigned validation, this is really up to you. I would just suggest that validating the volume of changes in each incremental update is a good idea, because deleting half of the zone is almost always an error. But in the case of DNSSEC, we have like a whole world what we would like to validate or what not. So I would just separate those possibilities into like several fields. Like we can validate DNSSEC stuff which is only inside the zone, like validating the signatures of the separate records against the DNS keys that are in the zone apex, or validating the correctness and completeness of the NSEC tree or NSEC 3 tree. And this can be done just looking at the zone file, right? Then we have another like possibilities regarding validating the delegation, like if the DNS keys that are in the zone apex are correctly linked in the parent zone's DS records, or if the apex NS records correspond with the parent NS records, or if they correspond among different name servers of the parent and even of the child. And the third is like validating the whole trust chain. That means that you validate all the DNS keys and DS records just from the DNS root to your zone. And I would argue that this is not too useful because, yeah, if you already validate the delegation that is delegating directly to you, then the delegations up to the root will be probably correct. And if they are not, you still have little options to do in that case. So I think, yeah, this is like in the tooling, there is quite a common possibility to validate the trust chain, but I don't see too much use for it. So this was about what to validate, and now about what tools can we use for validation. And the tools are also like separated into some families. Like some tools do the zone validation, like taking the whole zone file and validating it, mostly parsing the textual zone file. So this is, of course, this is slow, like validating the whole zone every time is slow, and even like writing it into textual zone file and then letting the tool to parse the text is also slow. Or you can do this incrementally. And then the other option is to validate by performing queries, like queries using DNSSEC validation, but you always query just something, and there is little possibility to query everything. So this usually leads to non-complete DNSSEC validation, but this is like good for validating the delegations and stuff. So for the full DNSSEC validation of the zone, we have a pretty large diversity of tools for all the vendors like ISC, NLNet Labs, and even CZ.NIC. And they are like easy to understand. You just pass the zone file, it tells you if it's correct or wrong, and possibly also what is wrong. But this is only for the zone scope, and as I said, it takes much time. Another possibility is bump-in derived validation implemented directly in the authoritative software implementation. This benefits from the fact that the DNS server instance has both the access to the full zone and to the changes that are coming, and it can be incremental, so fast. There is no problem of calling external tools because it is internal, it is implemented directly in the server. But the biggest disadvantage is that there is only one implementation of this node.dns. So for example, if you already use node.dns for the signing, there is like questionable benefit of using node.dns again for the zone validation, despite there is still some sense in this. But if you are using different like implementation for DNSSEC signing, this is probably the way to go because it is pretty easy to configure with just one line DNSSEC validation on, and you're good. You can also validate with an instance of a resolver, which makes sense because this is what actually the resolvers are actually your your client. So this is like validating the thing that you will be doing in the reality, but the error description, the best you can hope for is extended DNS error. And in some cases, when you validate the zone in advance, you might need some fake root because, yeah, if you are, for example, validating key rollover before it even happens, that you need some hacks like those. And it includes the whole trust chain validation, which might be useless. From ISC, you can use the Delph utility, which makes roughly the same as Resolver, but it is like it's better encapsulated for use as the DNSSEC validator. And of course, I have to mention DNSWiz, which is a great tool of validating DNSSEC. It is a really educative error description and visualization and stuff. And it can also like do the breakdown of delegation. For example, if some of the name servers are serving different DS records than others, but this is already like less beautiful, but still good. And there is another tool which I wanted to share with you is KDIC plus validate, where the biggest disadvantage is that it's not yet released. It's implemented just as the proof of concept, but I have prepared a demo on website, so you can try out this website for you and see the output. Yeah, the KDIC does not like care about delegation; it only validates the zone scope. But it's mostly useful for making sure that the NSEC or NSEC3 proofs are correct. This is especially useful for online signing because, yeah, in the case of online signing, you don't have anything like signed zone file that you could validate. So for online signing, you can only like validate by querying the servers, and the online signing usually is related to some hex in NSEC or NSEC3 field. So this can be really fruitful for those deployments to be verified. And another advantage is it is practically a DIG, so everyone familiar with DIG can use it easily, but there are more lines telling you what was validated and how, and what was correct and what was incorrect. So it's pretty educative and yeah. But after talking about all those tools that exist or almost exist, I still see some hole in the market for another validation tool that would focus on a single delegation and really query all the name servers of the parent zone, all the name servers of the child zone, and validate every pair of those if the NS records and DS records and DNS keys is mutually correct. And with some versatile options like giving a zone file instead of a name server or custom name servers or such things, it would be a great tool, I think. So the question for the discussion for you, or one of the questions, if you know such tool, or if you would like to have such tool. Okay, so let me just sum it up. For the bump in the right validation, that is really incremental. The mostly only option is to use the built-in DNSSEC validation capability of NetDNS. If you want to write your own script that validates the zone and you strive for simplicity, maybe you have smaller zones, then you can use the NSD stuff. That's only like launches a subprocess with system call and is easy enough. Or for more complex or more complicated or more versatile approach, you can use any NSD or not DNS with external validation capability. And what matters is how the error is reported to the operator in order to fix the issue that happens and needs to be fixed quickly. So this is all, and I welcome any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you for taking us through that, Libor. And although it's certainly not my field, I thought your slide 6 was quite, I think it was slide 6, illuminating where people are sort of taking the data but only validating it afterwards, which even from my, as I say, not my field, but that doesn't seem like the best approach. So I think some lessons there, and I'm sure Zaid would have been pleased with your praise of the beautiful VeriSign tooling as well. Noting that he was on. Okay. Somebody up, see if anyone's got any comments or questions. And as always, you can either unmute and talk, or if you prefer, just pop any comments or questions in the chat and I'll read them out loud, whichever is better for you. So anyone with any thoughts but based on the presentation? It looks like Willem is praising it, but may have a comment as well. Willem, did you want to come in? You're unmuted, but I'm not hearing any sound. Still no sound.
So maybe do
Yeah.
you hear me now? Yes.
Yep,
Yes.
that's it.
Sorry about that. Yes, I only wanted to make a remark about the slide with the using a resolver to query the incremental transfers, for example. You had on the slide that you may need a fake route, but Unbound has the option to configure stub zones. With stub zones, you just have the make use of the DNS or the name system as is, publicly, except for the zone you wish to target to a different name server. For example, the name server that's offering the zone for validation. So you don't need a fake route. Although you would need then the public internet, of course, which might be a disadvantage as well.
Yes. Yes, of course, resolvers have pretty many options of doing different stuff here and there regarding the DNSSEC validation and like the answering. But yeah, this was just a remark of one of our users who told us that they are operating a fake route for this. I was quite surprised, but I thought there is some there is some reason for that. Yeah, depends.
Yes.
Great, thank you, Willem. Any other thoughts from anyone else on the call, or any questions or comments? A chance to think, because there was it was very content rich, Libor. There's a lot to take in. Maybe that people need to go and think, which is always a good sign from an excellent presentation. You actually need to think about what you've presented. I'm just seeing if anyone else, can't see anyone typing at the moment, so possibly not. Yeah. Okay, well, I think it might be a case of coming back to you afterwards in this instance, once we've had a chance to reflect on what you've presented. But I hope that having the director's cut version of the presentation rather than the abbreviated version within the OARC 45 slot was beneficial, and will certainly give everyone some good food for thought. So yeah, if needs be, no doubt people will reach out to you afterwards. Are you happy for me to share your slides? I should have asked that earlier. Yeah. Okay, excellent. Because I think I can imagine a few people wanting to just go through them slowly and think about it. But okay, well, look, thank you for doing that. And yeah, really good to see the more sort of detailed presentation with a few different options there. Well, I'll encourage people, particularly on your last slide, in terms of where the preferences lie, in terms of if there is a need for a new tool, or is always a good question to ask if people are aware of an existing tool that perhaps hasn't come across your desk yet, that does the right sort of job, to at least sort of flag that to you so you can take a better look at it. Right, well, thank you for that. Let's then just move on briefly. So let me just reshare my slides as I just find the right button again. Okay, so let's just I'm just going to signpost some of the stuff from the news from the last week or so. So firstly, there was a briefing post the last ICANN meeting, ICANN 84, from Leticia Castillo Sojo, who I'm guessing some of you know. I evidently don't, in case I've mispronounced her name incorrectly. So just talking about some of the enforcement action that ICANN has undertaken since they changed their contracts, GTLD contracts. And as you'll see from the slide, in the last just over a year now, 18 months, and they've undertaken about 400 investigations, put out 4 breach notices, actioned 20,000 malicious domains, more importantly, and probably longer term, the more impactful aspect of all of this, seen sort of changes of processes by registries and registrars. I think around things like know your customer processes, etc. So it's good to see that happening. Still plenty to be done, in my opinion, but that's a great start. And coincidentally, also this week, Paulina Malacha from Centre also put together a summary of discussions at the ICANN 84 meeting. Again, sort of mainly focused on some of the discussions there that covered DNS abuse. So there's a good overlap between those two things. So you might want to take a look at both of those. She touches on things like authentication of requesters that are trying to access registrant information, and also the ICANN's definitions of DNS abuse, comparing and contrasting those definitions with those used by some of their members, which perhaps go rather further than the, I think it's 5 categories that ICANN focuses on at the moment. So an interesting subject area on that. Other things just to run through quickly. The continuing discussions, we talk about DNSSEC just now, but sort of post-quantum DNSSEC has been sort of bubbling along, so discussions about that for a while, and VeriSign Swapnil Sheth summarised some of the work that's underway at the moment, which I thought was quite useful, and he references some of the institutions like NIST, like the ITF, and like DNS OARC in his summary. There was sort of an attack, I'm not sure if it's deliberate or not, on Cloudflare's sort of domain ranking system, which led to some malicious domains featuring in the top 10 or so. And it looks like they're going to change their ranking algorithms. But in the meantime, they were redacting the domain names to discourage people from going to them. The last one I'll mention in any detail was the bottom of the screen there. Some thoughts from Vicara whether port 53 is a risk. It is a risk in terms of whether it's an attack vector for DDoS operators, and it explains why. The article explains why they think that is and what some of the mitigation strategies may be. I've not seen that particular aspect before, so I thought that was quite interesting. Other stuff, plenty of, again, sort of malware related things, but interesting piece from Quad9 on some of the downsides to potentially regulators requiring DNS resolvers to block access to particular domains, largely because of rights infringements, and whether that's a good or a bad thing. I think that's a perfectly useful discussion to have. I think Simon's on the call. I think there may be two sides to that, but maybe at least a minimal requirement is that if resolver operators have to implement blocking orders, then maybe there should be some form of cost recovery to reimburse them for the costs of doing that. Particularly those sort of not-for-profits like Quad9, for example. And then just bottom of the screen, you see DNS Filter is an early mover this year, at least in terms of what I've seen, with some predictions for 2026, which is a good thing, with some references to DNSSEC amongst other topics, but plenty around AI as well. I won't go through all of the rest, but there's sort of plenty of other things there, including the bottom one on the screen. It's the Web Summit in Lisbon this week, and going back to ICANN where we started, they're doing a couple of DNS-related sessions during the Web Summit. So if you're in Lisbon, they could be worth looking out for. Lots of other things. Moving away from sort of DNS-related stuff, I won't go through all of these, but you'll have the slides so you can click through these at your leisure. Certainly, if you're on the weekly headlines mailing list, you would have these already. But plenty of other stuff happening in the world that caught my eye. Probably just highlight the top two as they're sort of linked around. The European Commission is sort of started to work jointly with the Australian e-safety commissioner and Ofcom in the UK around child safety online. So there might be some convergence of their sort of with those three organisations thinking on that. And coincidentally, at the same time, the French regulator has opened up criminal probe into the impact of TikTok on the mental health of children. To say plenty of other things as well, but it take too long to run through all of those today. But yeah, they were all interesting to me anyway. So in my opinion, certainly worth a look. Yeah, and there was so much so that it went on to 3 slides this week, unusually. So plenty bedtime reading, perhaps. Perhaps more usefully, I just wanted to highlight a few impending deadlines. The first of which is tomorrow, which is nominations for the DNS OARC Programme Committee. So anyone wishes to nominate themselves, or I guess you can nominate other people as well. You've got till tomorrow to do that. And coming up in just over a week is the deadline to nominate people for the PIR's, the Public Internet Registry's Advisory Council. So those two coming up quite soon. And then slightly later, early December, call for presentations for FOSDEM for the sort of DNS dev room. And then things move on through December, but we'll come on to those perhaps nearer the time. But the main two, the DNS OARC Programme Committee nominations and the PIR Advisory Council nominations. So if you either want to put yourself forward to either of those or nominate others, then act quickly. Certainly in the case of the OARC one, you've got till tomorrow for that. As always, there's plenty of things happening through the remainder of this year. So I've already mentioned the Web Summit in Lisbon starting today. running through till Thursday. Also, middle of this week, if you didn't make it to Dublin, then Echo are hosting a readout with some of the more interesting things coming out of ICANN 84. So that will be well worth joining to get. I think it's about an hour, hour and a half. So cover a week's worth of stuff in a very short amount of time. So that was very time efficient. And then other things I got, the only other thing I've got for this calendar year now is the UK IGF meeting in London in December, which is just a one-day meeting in London. And then before we know it, we'll be in the new year with things like Nanog, Apricot, Morg, etc. I'm seeing in the chat, Darren's highlighting the East Coast KSK is this Thursday, the 13th. Okay, key signing for the root disease helpfully expanded upon. So anyone, I guess, on the East Coast US, you can join that. Although if you're not already on the East Coast US, because flights are being heavily curtailed at the moment because of the government shutdown, getting there is a little more challenging than normal at the moment, as people found out to their cost leaving the IGF meeting in Montreal on Friday or over the weekend. Ironically, the ones which had relatively short distance to go into the US seem to have the most challenging travelling. In terms of future cool topics, again, I only mentioned the next few. So this time next week, we'll be talking about some of the highlights from last week's ITF meeting. So give you a chance to sort of sleep on it for a couple of days. I'll probably do what I did last time, which is to call out probably one or at most two things from each day. But then, others can jump in with their highlights for things that I missed. Peter's got his hand raised, which I've only just noticed. Sorry, Peter, did I miss that or have you only just put it up?
You missed it a little bit. It doesn't really matter, but I was about the Cloudflare thing, which I just wanted to say I thought it was quite funny because basically what it was that there was a botnet that had so much activity that Cloudflare's list of top domains had a couple of domains in the, I think, number 1 and 3 spots, a .st and a .su domains that probably should have been filtered out. It's sort of funny because Cloudflare, it's a bit of a silly mistake from them. But it is fascinating that it shows how much activity the botnets actually are doing to reach the number 1 and 3 spots on Cloudflare's own top domains list, which I just thought was interesting to kind of clarify exactly what was happening there, because I find it absolutely fascinating personally.
Well, yes, because certainly the chart I saw, they displaced some major sites in terms of the level of traffic they were getting, which is quite extraordinary.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So, yeah.
They're higher than Google.com, which is like, mad, really.
Yeah, that's a lot of queries. David, did you want to come in on that as well?
Yeah, I just thought I felt the same that Peter just mentioned, except there's a nuance there, Peter. I don't know that you noticed that it was not registered on most other resolvers, just on Cloudflare, which is interesting because like we registered a very small number of them in our passive database. Infoblocks reported that they had seen a small number of instances of that. So for a botnet to basically target Cloudflare and Cloudflare only, I feel like there's something going on there that we don't all know yet.
That's really interesting. I didn't catch that. No, thanks.
I'm curious whether perhaps it was hosted on Cloudflare. I didn't check that. Wonder whether it was or not.
Well, according to Cloudflare, their number that they get it from is queries coming to 1111. And that's not what you use for authoritative hosting, right? That's their public resolver.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Curious. Yeah. But as you say, interesting. It came up for them, but not so much for others. Eric?
Yeah, what that brought up for me, that reading that article, was that there are some people, and also myself included, who are thinking, well, if you look up domains, the ones that you go to all the time are probably going to be okay because people had a chance to look at them, and if they were bad, they would have been put on block lists or whatever. There may be people out there who have a false assumption that maybe the Tranco 1 million or something that just determines popularity might be enough to say, well, okay, we can let this domain through. And that gets me to reevaluate. No, just because it's popular doesn't mean it's benign. And so we have to double check when we are creating our reputation lists and what we block with that, yeah, we actually have to do more due diligence.
Yes. And I'm hoping that Cloudflare might help a little bit with that, because there's a suggestion they're going to change their algorithms, which might not see them rank as highly in the future. But you're spot on there that just because something's highly ranked doesn't mean to say it's good, as this has proven. So perhaps long term it will do us all a favour. In terms of having more caution on some of the reputation scoring, which is no bad thing if it's highlighted a flaw in that. Right, let me just skip back to where I was, just wake up my machine again. I'll teach me for not looking and seeing the hand raised earlier, but there you are. Yeah. So as I was saying, we'll talk about some of the highlights from last week's IETF 124 next Monday. So if you were there, come armed with your reflections, or indeed if you were remote. As I was saying, I'll probably just call out 1 or 2 sessions per day. So feel free to come armed with your own views. Because obviously there's an awful lot of content there, so we'll have different perspectives on what stood out. And then the following week, we have a team from China will be joining us to share their thoughts on an internet draft, considerations for protective DNS server operators, so a potential BCP in the making. I'd sort of spotted this, I think, a couple of months ago. Thought it was interesting. Despite the time zone differences, they're happy to come on, so that should be good. And I know there are a number of people here who have an interest in protective DNS. So we'll no doubt have views on the document's content. So that should be an interesting discussion. And then just the last one I'll mention, you'll see we won't have a call on the 1st of December because I'll be at the Internet Watch Foundation's annual general meeting, which is a trustee. Be remiss of me not to go to that. But the following Monday, the 8th, we may have a discussion about the case for and against blockchain-based naming systems. I'm just waiting for one of the potential speakers for that to confirm their availability. So as soon as that's done, I'll let you know. Just for information, Josh Keogh from Infoblox is likely to be on that, but there's a speaker who talked to the sort of subject again at the last OARC meeting from ENS, I think, the Ethereum naming system. So we thought it would be a useful sort of put 2 sides of the story, and I think potentially Ross, who's on the call this week, Josh thought it might be useful for him to join the discussion as well. Hopefully you were aware of that in advance, Ross, and that didn't come as
yeah, I've seen the traffic. I'm not surprised by it. So
yeah, excellent. So hopefully if that date works. If not, the alternate date we were looking at was the 5th of January potentially, but I just penciled it in just for people's information at this stage. As soon as I know for sure, I'll obviously update the schedule and let you all know. But I think that should be an interesting discussion whenever it happens. Okay, so that's probably more than enough from me other than to again acknowledge DNS OARC and sort of thank them for their sponsorship, which, as you say, there's a good crossover from the last OARC meeting on this call this time, coincidentally, so that worked quite well. But let me just pause there as we've got 3 or 4 minutes before the top of the hour, and to see if anyone else had anything else you wanted to come in with that you want to sort of share with others, in which case now's a good opportunity. And yeah, probably if you want to out, if you do, just unmute and talk will be the easiest option. We'll give a minute to see if anyone does. I'm not seeing any unmuting. A few people are a little bit tired from traveling over the weekend. No. Okay. Well, right. Well, look, let's sort of draw a halt there. Libor, in particular, thank you for the excellent presentation. And I'm sure you'll get comments after I've circulated the slides together with a link to the recording, and see what tools people either have an interest in being developed or want to highlight to you for you to take a look at if they think there is already something in that space that you described. But hope that was interesting for everybody else. Have a fantastic week as always, and look forward to seeing you on the call next week to talk about the highlights from Montreal last week. So catch up with you all then, but have a great week in the meantime. Bye all.
Yes, thank you, Andrew.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Andrew.
Thank you.